I think that art can still be conceptual and still be lower class, definitely. I'm trying to think. I wouldn't call it conceptual. This is easy to get, and it's easy to appreciate, but it's conceptual. Because again, what's beautiful about it is not its technique or how it's made, or the contrast and the colors. No, none of that is actually important to the painting. At least I would argue. I would argue against it. What's important to the painting is the fact that the bank is burning, following the financial crisis of 2008. Proctophile says, "Do you feel that art needs to have a political message to have value?" I don't think so. I don't think art necessarily needs a political message to have value, but I think a political message is, depending on your definition of what political is. Like maybe all art is political, right? For example, the Ukrainian artist that I saw the exhibition of yesterday, even though the art in itself wasn't political, its very presence in a entire Russian invasion exhibition made it political. Its context made it political, even though in its essence it wasn't really about political stuff. It was still political. I didn't like it. I like, as I said, I still found it boring, but nonetheless, it had some politics to it. And I feel like many artworks will have politics to it. And again, depending on what you define as politics, for example, if a queer person makes a painting about their experience as a queer person, will you consider that political? Some people will, some people won't. But because some people will consider it political, I think it is political. Does art need to have a political message to have value? I don't think so. I think art needs to be conveying an idea, conveying an experience. Yeah, idea, experience are pretty much two things. Maybe there's other things, but are two things that personally to me are appealing. Experiences can be very, very political, and ideas can be very, very political. I think very often ideas and experiences are more political than they aren't. But I'm not excluding the fact that you can still have valuable art that isn't political. Cianzetta says, all art exists within a political context, but doesn't art need to have political intention to be political? Not necessarily. I think the art of drag performance doesn't have a political intention necessarily, but it's very, very politicized. I guess it depends on what you consider what political is, right? Dictating which social behavior is acceptable or not is in the spheres of politics. If you paint a nude woman and exhibit publicly, some people might find that not insulting, but they might find that not okay. They'll say, hey, listen, you can't have a nude woman in public. The nude women tradition is very, very long, so maybe that won't happen. But if you paint a nude man, as Sylvia Slade did that in the 1970s, and some people were offended by the fact that there were nude males on a public wall. Sylvia Slade may have or may have not intended it to be political, but it was politicized. Some people were like, all right, this is not okay for it to be, placed in public. The fact that some people may argue that your art may not be in public sparks a debate, and that debate on whether or not something should be socially acceptable or not is a political debate. So anything can be political in art. It's as long as some people are fragile about it. Proctophile says, I specialize in abstracts and prefer art for art's sake. I feel that politics distract or skew one's interpretation and removes the chance for a more personal attachment to a specific work. Fine, if that's how you feel. Personally, I don't feel that way. I feel like I was thinking about that when I was driving back home just before stream, and I was like, art in the age of digital reproduction is art where being cool and like having cool art and aesthetically pleasing art is not enough because we're inundated with cool and aesthetically pleasing art. To me, when art for art's sake, or art relies its value solely on itself, on its cool factor, on its beauty factor, or whatever, I feel like that art is doesn't have a personality, or like, as you call it, personal attachment. Maybe that's my own experience, and that's only my experience. Maybe you can totally disagree, and that's fine. But I feel like all the kind of art that doesn't that's not about conveying an idea or conveying an experience, especially an experience. I love the idea of conveying experience, or of sharing thoughts within a community. If it's not about that, then you can just be anyone on the internet and do any of that art. Art for art's sake, very often, at least to me, can be comparable to AI art. Art that is just good for the sake of being good. See, Lenore, or Pyroanarchist, says, recently they put up a couple of art pictures of queer people around here as an artwork, and some assholes destroyed some of them. See, they saw this, the normalization of queer people in public spaces as something political. So they answered politically by defacing those artworks. But see, like, I mean, that's also a product of the times where the existence of queer people in themselves are politicized by the right. But nonetheless, art in that context, that just depicts or conveys or shows the experience of queer people, is going to be political. I see a clapped out motor says, I'm currently making some patently uncool art at the moment for a huge company for money. Feel sad, but I live in a rented property. Sorry to hear that. Part of me says, like, yeah, that fucking sucks. But part of me thinks, like, hey, listen, a lot of people can't even make uncool art for a huge company for money. But you're making money out of it, which is much more than many artists in this very chat can say. Not laughing at you artists in chat that can't make money off their art. Sorry. And Proctofile says, so I take it you don't care much for abstracts in general. Not in general. I cared for abstracts when it was unconventional, when it was back in the day when art history was about pushing boundaries and pushing and reinventing painting all the fucking time. But I think we're beyond a point where reinventing painting can be considered art, as it was back in the day. Back in the day, all right, Rothko, holy shit, this is brand new, this is exciting. But make a Rothko today, it's boring. Pollock, same thing, super exciting. Wow, look at that. He paints on the floor. What a crazy lad. But now, if someone does that, it's like, okay, whatever. The context is very important in this case. It's artistry, at least at that time, was very often measured by how can you push the bounds or progress art. What's the next step of art? And these people were pushing that next step through abstraction. But right now, I don't feel like we're out of that paradigm, right? Of trying to push art to its next step. Now I feel like, and that's my opinion. Again, it's my opinion on what art is and what it should be. But instead of trying to push art and like trying to reinvent it every fucking time and being like, oh my God, have you seen, oh, this guy painted on the floor. Oh, this guy just paints a full color. Oh, this guy just paints a line. That's Barnett Newman. Instead of doing that, we can go back to art's original intent or original purpose, which was back in the day, which was conveying ideas. And we can even convey experiences now. And doing it in a very, very personal way, a way which I believe can be even best conveyed when done in smaller communities. I've talked about that. I might actually make a video about that, make a manifesto on what I think art should be in the digital age. ConnorCore_Ancom says, our existence is very political, it seems. I mean, you do have Ancom in your Twitch username. So I imagine politics must be very, very intertwined with your personal sense of identity, as it is with me, as it is with mine. Oh, Xianzeda says, then what was the point of abstract art in the first place? Just breaking boundaries for the sake of it? I don't think it was to break boundaries just for the sake of it. It was like a new language, a new visual language was developed, and I believe the appeal of this visual language came from its breaking boundaries. It came from it being the new step in art history, right? The new step in the infinite progress of art history. For example, abstract expressionism came in the context of America becoming more and more dominant on the world stage. Abstract expressionism is like a very, very American art movement. I have the book. You know what? Fuck it. I'll go get the book. Chair stream. Get excited. It's a chair stream. Irving Sandler. Ugh. The Triumph of American Painting, A History of Abstract Expressionism, Irving Sandler. Like, abstract expressionism was seen as like this new conquering, it was large, it was big, it was American. It came in the 1950s after the Americans liberated Europe from Nazism and fascism. Don't even think of the USSR. They didn't do anything. They were commies. But anyway, so like this abstraction came also at wasn't just about breaking boundaries. It was about, in that context, about defining a new art that was spearheaded by America, the new world hegemon. There's a whole thing about abstract expressionism being funded and supported by the CIA because it was about American, not supremacy, but like cultural effervescence, I guess. Cultural imperialism. There you go. Yeah, they exported abstract expressionism with CIA backing. Yeah, Elsie, you're right. As Esoteric Life says, it's also hard to remember how much controversy surrounded each new modern movement as it emerged, making it super political and super relevant. Yeah, it created so much discussion around each modern movement, right? There was discussions, there was interaction, there was a genuine engagement with new art movements because they were new, they were controversial, people spoke about them, and because of that interaction, that engagement with the art, I feel like it gave it more relevance. Now, if you do like an abstract painting, nobody's gonna give a fuck about it, and you're not doing anything new, and therefore there's less chances of it being actually interacted with and engaged with, and because of that, I don't care. However, if you convey your experience in a meaningful way that I can connect to in some way or another, then I might care. I might even care more if you're part of my community and if you're in my community and exhibit in the community, which is why I advocate for a communal art. Concord says, what classifies as working class art? And I don't know if there's still working class art anymore, because I don't know how many people actually identify with the working class. Most people identify with, we're all fucking the what is it in English? I have medium class and average class, middle class. Most people identify with the middle class, because when they're middle class, or when they're low class, they see people struggling more than them. So they're like, all right, I'm struggling, but have you seen this other person who struggles even more? I'm medium. And when you're rich, well, you see people around you and like, hey, look, that person got a super sports car. My neighbor just got a super sports car. All right, they're rich. I'm not part of the upper class because they're rich. So I'm like upper middle class. Yeah. Sneaky Revenant says middle class is just invented to make people feel like they're closer to the capitalist than the homeless person. So I don't know if there's still like a middle class, a lower class, or a working class art in general because of that, right? I think I think if there's art that we should push, it's, and I keep talking about it, and I said I'm going to make a video about it. But it's like community art. Share your experience from your community, like as a person living in your community, and share with other people. And perhaps people will feel better connected to it. And it's not working class art, but it's definitely more of a community art, which I guess it depends where you live, right? If there's like a social mixity in the place where you live, then you might, have working class art mixing in with bourgeois art, and maybe that clash can create some engaging and sparking conversations, right? If you live in a more working class area, then your art will definitely be working class, and will be if you're talking about ideas and experiences that you feel as an artist, and communicate it with people who are around you, who might be more open to listening about these experiences because they're close to you in your community, then I think that is going to make art that not only is working class art, but also working class art that's made and understood by working class people, instead of working class art fetishized and exoticized by bourgeois collectors. Good point, Alcy, or Esoteric Life. I would argue that working class art exists, but partly because of the proliferation of art materials for cheap. Not knocking that, by the way. It looks more and more like the upper class art. I can agree with that. Because of the hierarchy between upper class and working class art, artists will always try to emulate the art. Not always, because some people will embrace working class art. Sometimes people will emulate it just for the aesthetic of it, but very often people will aim for upper class art because of its prestige, because of its status. The amount of artists who are completely poor and who could like convey ideas and experiences that I would love to learn about and love to not to experience, but to try to understand through art, actually try to do bourgeois art that will appeal to a more conventional. And of course, like market pressures, market forces will make you do art that will appeal to a broader public, or which also look for art that's more I guess that looks more refined or whatever. Yeah, but I don't know if I agree completely with that, Elsie. Elsie says, it's arguable that in the current market that a lot of high-skilled art is working class and a lot of low-skill art is upper class art. I mean, it depends what you mean by low and high skill. Technically perfect landscape being sold for cheap, so that would be like a high-skilled art that is working class, versus a conceptual work selling for hundreds of thousands, which would be low skill for the upper class. I think that art can still be conceptual and still be lower class. Definitely. I'm trying to think. I wouldn't call it conceptual. So Alex Schaefer. Let me show you Alex Schaefer. I wrote "Man Paints Burning Banks." Alex Schaefer painted a series of burning banks in following the 2008-2009 financial crisis. He had a couple of them. Here you only have one, but it will have to serve as an expose. I feel like this is not high-skilled art in terms of its technique. Maybe you can argue otherwise, and that's fine. But I think here the appeal is not necessarily the aesthetic or what it looks like, but more its concept, right? Which is a burning bank, and what it symbolizes and in what context it's made. For in this case, like you look at that painting, you wouldn't think this is conceptual art, right? It doesn't look conceptual. When we think conceptual art, we think something that's very hard to understand, very hard to decipher, very hard to just appreciate. But I feel like this isn't hard to appreciate. This is easy to get, and it's easy to appreciate, but it's conceptual. Because again, what's beautiful about it is not its technique or how it's made or the contrast and the colors. No, none of that is actually important to the painting. At least I would argue. I would argue against it. What's important to the painting is the fact that the bank is burning, following the financial crisis of 2008, and it might be the kind of image that a lot of people will feel attracted to, and who will the kind of image that people will enjoy, that might find cathartic. And I think that's a kind of working class image that's conceptual, and that can appeal to ideas or experiences, like the ideas or experience of Schaeffer here, Alex Schaeffer, are conveyed in such a way that many people will be able to relate to it, whether it be your anger or whether it be your understanding of the crisis.